Hi everyone, this is Greg Hunt. I'm a mediator, a trainer, and host of No Disputing That, the podcast for anyone with an interest in dispute resolution. In this series, I sit down with some of the leading names in the dispute resolution field to discuss mediation, arbitration, and other forms of alternative dispute resolution, which we also call ADR. We may even cover other issues in the law and in life in general. Expect some laughs, some honesty, and quite a few editing errors along the way. Welcome back. Today I'm in Billericay and I'm with Tope Adeyemi, who is in Lagos. Tope is a barrister and arbitrator practicing from 33 Bedford Row Chambers in London, where she was born and raised. Presumably, she wasn't born in Chambers. I think she means she was born in London. Tope is a dual qualified barrister, was called to the bars of England and Wales in 2008 and Nigeria in 2019. Her practice focuses on regulatory law and alternative dispute resolution, ADR. She is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators and a member of its London branch committee. She is regularly appointed to act as a sole arbitrator in disputes. Tope is a legal advisor to the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, or ACCA for short, in which capacity she advises its committees during disciplinary and regulatory hearings. In 2009 and 2016, Tope was an associate lecturer in law with the Open University. Tope, it's great to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me, Greg. I really am honoured to be interviewed as part of your podcast, and I've been listening to some of them, and I found them really interesting. So hopefully this will also be interesting.
Yeah, well, I hope so. It should be, because you've got a very interesting background yourself, which we'll be talking about in a moment. Now, looking for some common ground to start with, did you know that when I was I can't remember if it was when I was at the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators or when I was at CEDA, I set up a mediation service with ACCA.
Ah, okay. No, yeah. I hadn't known that, but I suppose I'm not surprised, because I know you have, had an interesting career, and especially in ADR. So I'm not surprised. How did it go, Greg? Did it?
I think it was one of those. I think it was when I was at CEDA, and I think it was quite late on. So I don't know. I know it was set up. I was going to ask you if it still exists, to be honest.
Okay.
But I don't know if it was used or not. It probably was, because it was a good scheme. And I think it dealt with disputes between ACCA and members of ACCA.
Okay. I can't say I know if it's still in place. It probably has evolved. But I wouldn't. I'm not sure if it's still.
Well, it would have been 2007, 2008. So I'm sure if it's still there, it's now evolved, like you say, into something else. Now, one question I have to ask you, because for listeners, Tope and I have worked together, but we've never actually met.
No.
Have I been saying your name right?
Yeah. No, you're saying it right.
Good. Because I'm quite bad with names. And I have to get people sometimes a few times. When I do the training in Ulster Uni, for the I do the mediator training for the International Commercial Law graduate scheme, postgraduate scheme, and the names in Ireland can be really difficult if you don't know what the name is, because it's got sort of letters you wouldn't expect to be in a name, and the sounds aren't the same. So one of the first exercises I do is actually get everybody to tell me how to pronounce the name right, because I don't want to embarrass myself as we go through the course getting everyone's name wrong. But it could be something which is quite difficult. People get very touchy about the names, and as
I think if they get the impression that people don't care and they've not made the effort, I think sometimes even if the name is not being pronounced perfectly, as long as you can see that the person has had a regard to trying to ensure they're pronouncing it correctly, most people are fine.
Yeah. I find with me it's spelling my name, because Oh, actually, I have trouble as well because I'm from the north of England, northwest of
Mm.
England, and I've lived in the south east now and worked in and around London for more than half my life. But I still have to spell my surname, and it's only 4 letters. It's Hunt. But people write all sorts of stuff down, so I have to actually every single time I do it, I say Hunt, and I still
That's
get people.
interesting.
Yeah, I still get people coming back to me and saying, right, Hunt, and I know Hunt.
Mm.
So after all this time,
Mm.
people still, even though I've only got quite a mild accent, when I say my name, people still
Ah.
don't quite. And even my wife, who's from down here, I've heard her on
Mm.
the phone speaking to people, and she spells it out, and she doesn't need to, because
Yes.
everyone can understand her. But yeah, never mind. Okay, moving on because we've got a lot to cover. And I don't
Mm.
want to keep you too long. I know it's early where
Mhm.
you are. You've made me
And
get
no,
up
but
at half
it's
seven in the
early. It's
morning.
yes. Apologies, Greg. Hopefully, what time do you usually start work? Probably
Oh,
the
I'm normally working around. Well, if I have to take my son to the train station, I take him at 7:20, and then I
ah.
go and have a coffee, and I do work until about 10 o'clock in the coffee shop.
Oh,
And
that's
so
nice.
yeah, that's nice and early. But otherwise, around 8, I suppose, around 8.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Right, you've got a very interesting journey into ADR. So I'd
Mm.
really like you to just take listeners through how you've got where you are today.
Yes, and I think it's been an interesting journey and an enjoyable one. So
Mm.
I was called to the bar in 2008 by Middle Temple, and I started my pupillage at a common law set in 2009, so the following year, and then I
Mhm.
completed it the following year. So I started in October 2009, and then it concluded in 2010. And in the first couple of years of my career as a barrister, I did a mixture of work, mostly advocacy. So I represented people in criminal cases. I did some contractual disputes, and I did a very limited amount of family law work.
Mhm.
But whatever it was, it always required me to go to court to represent people and provide advice. And then in around 2013, I became a bit more interested in regulatory law, um, representing professionals before their various disciplinary bodies, and also just regulatory law more broadly. And there came an opportunity in 2014 to become a financial ombudsman.
Mhm.
And what really attracted me to that role was that it was regulation from a financial perspective. And there was also um, the opportunity, or not so much the opportunity, the job was as an ombudsman, you would write a final decision on a dispute that had been brought by a consumer about a financial institution. So the first step would be for that complaint or issue to be looked at by an adjudicator. And then if the parties were not happy, it would go up to an ombudsman to resolve. And I just liked the concept of bringing my skills as a lawyer to this more quasi-judicial form of work and assessing the merits of something and coming up with a solution, hopefully, that both parties would be happy with. And over the course of 4 years, I drafted loads of decisions on a variety of financial disputes, and that really made me think a bit more about um, alternative dispute resolution, because
Mm.
ombudsman schemes around the world are a form of dispute resolution, but I didn't know much about anything else. And I thought, this is actually quite an effect, if done properly, this is an effective way of resolving disputes that's cost effective.
Mm.
And I started looking at how I could learn a bit more, how I could get more trained in the area. And in around, I think, 2016, I joined the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, initially as a member.
Mhm.
And I learned more I focused on arbitration because I thought that actually that interests me. I know I listened to one of your podcasts, Greg, and I know one of the things you said is you didn't so much like arbitration in the sense that you found mediation was more appealing to your kind of personality type and how you'd like to resolve things. Whereas for me, actually, I found arbitration. I liked the idea that you'd get the information and you'd be in a position to consider it and write an award that would hopefully be reasoned enough that both parties would accept it, whether or not they were the winner or loser. And I learned about arbitration more generally, and then the technicalities, and became a member of the Chartered Institute. And at that point, I decided that while it's been great being an ombudsman, I think that I had gained as much from that role as I was going to be able to, and it was time to return to the bar and also broaden my expertise in alternative dispute resolution. So in around 2018, I applied to join the Centre for Effective Dispute Resolution, CEDA, their consumer panel, because they have a range of panels, and I joined them, and I was resolving disputes on other matters as an adjudicator. So that was kind of similar to acting as a sole arbitrator, but it's just a slightly different form of dispute resolution. And those were telecommunications, surveying disputes that I was working on. And so that was really, so by like 2018, I think I had quite a broad ADR practice that I was building, and I thought, you want to have an international perspective. Currently, you're called to the bar of England and Wales. It would be really beneficial if you had a broader insight into other jurisdictions. Not broader insight, you had some expertise in another jurisdiction. And because my family are from Nigeria, and I've always found Nigeria to be an extremely vibrant place, especially for business and especially for legal services, I thought, you know what, before I go back to the bar and start building my practice again, let me qualify, take this opportunity to qualify in Nigeria. So I went to Nigeria, I qualified, and that was that. And then from there on, I've just been working as a barrister and also as an arbitrator and in ADR more generally. And I still practice in the area of regulation, financial regulation and professional disciplinary. And I also accept appointments as an arbitrator. And I'm bringing, and I'm working on it. I do get appointments, but I wouldn't pretend to say that all my work is arbitration. It's something that I'm building. But so far, it's been really interesting. So that's the journey in a nutshell, Greg. And well, you know what I forgot to mention, Greg, which was extremely important, was I did Hunt ADR's ARBEX program, and I did that during lockdown. So, for those who don't know, there's an opportunity to receive appointments for those who are suitably qualified, and they're essentially assessed. And I did 10 of those. I did at least 10 of. I was appointed in 10 disputes by Hunt ADR, and I drafted my awards. And at the end, those awards were assessed, and I got very good feedback. And I found that program, participating in it, to be really, really motivating, because I found the cases quite interesting, and I just found it really interesting participating in the program, getting the feedback, doing the cases, looking into those disputes, and it added some momentum to what I was already doing. So I think that was an important thing I did in 2019.
And that's good to know that you found it so useful, and that
Mm,
program was put in place fundamentally for people like you who had
mm,
done the training, but and had gone all the way through to fellowship maybe, or the equivalent
mm,
in any other organisation, but then couldn't find that they could get any work. And it's something the institute used to do in the old days when it still had schemes that it
mm,
could appoint its members to, and it was just something I thought would be useful.
mm,
And for me, it's a great way of seeing who the good arbitrators are.
mm,
And it doesn't matter who you are. If I get an application today for somebody to join the panel, I don't care who they are. They have to do Arbex,
mm,
and it just gives me an opportunity to test the quality of their work
mm,
before I invite them formally onto the panel. But it gives them the opportunity to have the work assessed. It's not by me; it's by an
mm,
external assessor, and to get into the habit of writing real live arbitration awards, so
mm.
that when they are let loose properly, they do have some genuine experience behind them. So, yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's been one of the biggest successes of the business, actually, Arbex.
That's great,
Yeah.
and I can understand why it's very attractive,
Mm.
and it's a and surprisingly it's a unique opportunity.
Yeah.
So I understand why it's been popular and successful.
Yeah. So you've had quite a fast rise really from when you decided to leave the world of ombudsman to
Mm,
go into arbitration, and you've completed your training and all that
mm,
sort of stuff a lot quicker than a lot of people do. So well done on that. You've
mm,
certainly hit
thank
the
you.
road running. You mentioned, of course, that you wanted to dual qualify, and you qualified in Nigeria and in the UK. Um,
Mm.
has that had any impact on your view of international arbitration?
Oh, yes, definitely. Because what you realize when you qualify in another jurisdiction is that while somewhere like the UK, and particularly London, is a very sophisticated, well-established arbitral centre, that they're excellent practitioners all over the world.
Mm,
And they bring with them, for want of a better word, that Western training, but they also have an insight that they've developed through living and working in their own jurisdiction.
yes.
It's very interesting to observe and to learn about. And that you also find, especially in somewhere like Nigeria, there's a lot of business happening, and inevitably there are a lot of disputes. And you get to see that, yes, there are people, obviously Nigeria practitioners, but you see practitioners from other jurisdictions, the UK, from America, from Germany, from
Mm,
Italy, from South Africa, all there. And you realize that actually, to really be an international arbitration practitioner, you do have to have a global outlook. You have to be well connected. You
mm,
have to have commercial awareness, that's developed not just in one space, but as much as is feasible, has you have a commercial awareness that
mm,
has, and you have some knowledge of other markets, so that if you are involved, or you are appointed as an arbitrator, you're not just bringing technical expertise to the work that you're doing. You actually have some knowledge and insight into other jurisdictions and into
mm.
other commercial centres that you can bring to the resolution of that dispute. So
Yeah.
yes, it's been very insightful, and it opens up your eyes.
Yeah, and when you're looking for arbitration appointments, and
Mm,
particularly on an international basis,
mm.
are you putting yourself forward for sort of general commercial disputes, or are you concentrating on one particular area of work?
I would say it's general commercial disputes, but because of my background as a financial ombudsman, and also as my practice, I do elements of financial regulation. I
Mm,
do, to a degree, look to appointments with a financial element, but it is general commercial disputes.
Yeah, good. And do you put yourself forward to all the different arbitration centres? And there's been a few new ones lately, haven't there?
I would say I try and pace myself. So I'm grateful for some of the appointments that I've received from the Chartered Institute directly. And then I've had a few party appointments, and I've joined one or two panels, institutional panels, and arbitration centre panels, and I think I do it bit by bit, because first and foremost, there's I always say that sometimes with arbitration you can get caught up in trying to get work and get appointments, and you've not yet attended to what you've actually got in hand. So you might have some work that you're working on. You've joined a panel, and there's some opportunity to network and also to meet people and be involved in some of the activities they're doing. You're not doing that because you're trying to get onto something else. And so while I'm keen to be proactive and to ensure that I'm moving forward, I do try and pace myself and ensure that I'm making the most of the opportunity that I've already been provided with, and the group or the committee or the panel that I'm already on.
That's really important and a really good attitude to have, I think. And in my last podcast, it was with Roger Levitt, who is a very experienced mediator. And in that, we were discussing mediators taking on too much work. How many mediations should you do in a week and things like that. And I think it's the same for arbitration. You've got to know your limit, and you've got to be able to serve the parties that you've been appointed to without the detriment, of taking on too much. So I think pacing yourself and doing it and making sure you're delivering the best service to those that you're already involved with, and then quietly expanding is the best way to do it, rather than just taking everything on, because there's nothing worse as an administrator of arbitration than getting complaints from parties because the arbitrator's not been in touch, or they've promised the award by a certain date and it's now a month later and they've still not got it, and it's because the arbitrator's taken on too much. So yeah, I think that's definitely the right attitude to have. Moving to a slightly different but very much related subject as well. I know diversity is really important to you, and it's the thing that you really wanted me to raise today. And diversity, particularly in arbitration, but I think in ADR in general. Do you want to sort of jump in and give me some more information on that?
Yeah, well, I would link diversity and inclusion into this issue of, and I put it on there, I kind of thought about this as an interesting issue as well, future-proofing arbitration. So making sure that going forward, that arbitration remains a competitive and attractive dispute resolution mechanism. And I think ensuring diversity and inclusion is one of the means of attaining that goal, that it's fit for purpose going forward. Because what I'd say about inclusivity and ensuring that a community, a sector is diverse, is that it's not just the right thing to do, it's also attractive, I believe, to the modern consumer. So the modern consumer of commercial services and legal services does want to think that the individuals and that they're engaging to do the work that they need to be done are the best people for the job, and also reflect the business community. And if they come from a homogeneous group, all look the same, perhaps they're all white, all male, while that is attractive to some people, and don't get me wrong, some people gain some assurance from seeing a group of people like that. Actually, the majority don't gain assurance from seeing a homogenous group of people. They feel more assured if they can see that actually this panel is made up of people from different backgrounds, that yes, they're able, they're skilled, they're well trained, but they reflect the kind of individuals that I see in business, and I think that makes that will make arbitration more attractive. And I think there are endless studies to show that diverse panels make better decisions. They make decisions that are more robust, they have less blind spots, and they tend to be more acceptable to parties. So I think that for all those reasons, diversity and inclusion is important. And what I find is that these kind of initiatives only succeed if people are consistent and fairly aggressive with their pursuit of the goal. So I'm part of Arbitral Women, and I really think that Arbitral Women has done a lot of very positive work to advance women's career and to ensure that women get more arbitral appointments. And I think that that kind of work, ideally, and I hope to be part of it, expands to racial diversity, and also people who may have mobility problems or other kind of issues, who are able and would be are effective practitioners, are also able to really be part of the arbitral community effectively and to get appointments. So I think it's the right thing to do, but it's also the smart thing to do to ensure that arbitration and ADR generally is inclusive and is diverse.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think going back to when I first joined the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, there was very little diversity, and I'd had very little diversity in my life. The town I came from, there was virtually zero diversity, and it was only when I started traveling with the institute, going abroad for work, that I really started to see firsthand the incredible benefits of having a diverse audience, or delegation, or whatever it might be, or training group, and the stuff you'd learn from people, and just everything. It just became normal when you were training abroad to have a diverse group, and then you'd come back to the UK and it wouldn't be diverse at all. But now when you look, it's changed a lot. And I think for me, I think mediation as a sector is probably more diverse than arbitration. Certainly when I look at sort of people who go through my training, or who go onto panels and things like that, there's, for example, a lot more women, and almost 50-50 probably, and in training probably more women currently training to be mediators than men, and also I think in arbitration there's still a little bit of white middle class male lawyer sort of being the main sort of group of people who seem to be the ones who are applying to go on to things. So it's great that people like Women in Arbitration, groups like Women in Arbitration exist, and other similar groups to try and promote that everybody should get an opportunity. And one of the things that I'm interested in as well is the socio-economic side. I come from a background that wasn't privileged at all. Very working class family. My dad died when I was young, so my mum was a single parent during the 80s in the Northwest. It wasn't a very good time to be around. And I was given an opportunity at the Institute by someone who had a similar background to me, but had made it good at that stage. And I've always looked at it and thought, well, I would love to see more people who didn't go to one of the top universities maybe get an opportunity to get involved. And it was great yesterday. I didn't attend in person, but I watched on video the video link, the National Mediation Awards. And the first award that they did, they had to do it first because it was peer mediation, and it was school children, and they had to get a train back to wherever they were coming from. And so they were the first up. And it was great because it was such a mix. It was a great mix. The schools were normal schools. The children were every sort of mix of children that you can imagine. And they were all really embracing mediation because it was the mediation award. And I wonder, arbitration's a bit more formal than mediation. It might be more difficult to get younger people involved. But certainly maybe the skills that you learnt as an ombudsman, which, is in many ways adjudication, which is what an ombudsman does, is an introduction to arbitration. So maybe there could be more done at school level, even if it was starting at sixth form or somewhere, to promote arbitration as well, and bring in more diversity across all forms of sort of diversity related issues to arbitration.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Greg. I think it is. I think that socioeconomic inclusion, for one, I don't know if that's a term, but I think to ensure that people from different backgrounds economically are able to forge careers in arbitration will improve the quality of the sector significantly. And I think one of the issues is always the cost, actually, because I think that people will always aspire, school children, as long as they know about something, they will always aspire to most of the time, to doing interesting and good work. But the barrier is often, especially with arbitration, the cost of participation, the cost of doing the courses. There tends to be an emphasis on, if you want to build your career as an arbitrator, of having trained in certain institutions, of which the fees are very expensive. And that in itself can be a barrier to even at times getting an unpaid internship that would open doors. So I think initiatives that don't cost a lot for people to participate in would make a really big difference. So you're not taking away from the need for somebody to demonstrate ability and skill, to have good communication skills, to write well, to have knowledge of the law if that's required. You're not taking away from that, but what you're saying is that it doesn't cost a lot for them to participate in this course or to participate in this scheme. And I think one of the things that could be beneficial, because I'm sure this mediation competition that the school children you described participated in probably wasn't a lot or it didn't cost a lot to participate in, and they were able to travel on the train at a hopefully affordable cost. Whereas something like arbitration, there's not always opportunities for younger people to get involved in arbitral work at a low cost. I think it's increasing, and I think one of the positive benefits of the pandemic, notwithstanding how awful it was for a lot of people, was that it did in an odd way level the playing field, because I think we all realized that, or we all saw that certain things that had often you wouldn't have heard about that took place in a part of the world or in a location that you couldn't afford to go to were suddenly online, and that had two benefits. One, a lot of people could participate in it, and two, you heard about it. You thought, oh, actually, I never knew they had this competition, or they had this event where where there was a plenary session and you could network with all these very well established people in the arbitral world. So that exists, and actually for this year you can just sign up and you don't have to actually go there and pay and do all of this, and I think that in itself broadened participation and engagement in arbitration, and brought a number of people in who had been keen but perhaps hadn't had the funds to really engage in the way they wanted. So I think there are many ways to make arbitration more accessible to people who perhaps don't have a lot of money at their disposal to fund certain things. But the other point I would make is that there are a number of people in arbitration who have, at great expense to themselves, funded their way through developing themselves. So they've self-financed their development, and then they're not necessarily wealthy, but they've just made a lot of sacrifices, and they've really pushed and worked part-time and taken out loans at times, or tried to be resourceful in how they've gone about things. So I think it's also important to remember that those individuals as well.
Yeah. Well, it's all about that inclusion, isn't it? And at the end of the day, if somebody wants to do arbitration or mediation or whatever it might be, there shouldn't be unnecessary barriers in their way.
Yes.
To enable them to do that. And I was just thinking when you were talking then as well, that there must be a way of, mediation is now quite well known.
Yes.
Arbitration, I don't know, if I was to walk up and down Billericay High Street and no one ever asks me what I do and then doesn't say, can you explain it? If I say, oh, I'm a mediator, or what's that? And if I say, oh, I my business runs arbitration schemes, oh God, what's that? What's arbitration? So there's still a massive lack of knowledge of what ADR methods are in the general population. And I think that's something which, I've worked for some of the biggest ADR providers in the country, and I know they've tried very hard, but there's still this huge education gap, which would not only increase use of ADR, but would also get more people and therefore more diversity. Now we've got a more diverse country into ADR as well. So I think there's still a massive educational need.
I agree.
It's very difficult, because how do you get to the masses when there's not a lot of funds available to get to the masses with? But let's move on. Let's move on to a fun question. I've got a bit of a theme running, and it's about embarrassing things that have happened to you at an event or conference. So I'm going to do one as well, but I'm going to ask you to go first on this.
Okay. Embarrassing. Oh yeah, of course. I would say more embarrassing thing that happened at a hearing. So I think I do a lot of remote hearings, and 95% of the time everything is perfect. The internet is fine. Perhaps there'll be a bit of a lag sometimes, but generally it's fine. And I think and this was last year actually. I was having some real technical issues, and I had caused it, and it was only me, and I was the one that had caused the delay to everything. My internet wasn't working properly, and I think I delayed the start of the hearing by about half an hour. And then I finally got everything on. Everything was on board. Everything was working well. And the other party had made their submissions, and then it was time for me to make my submissions. And I had drafted what I needed to say in a Word document, and I'd started. And then, literally, just as I was progressing through my submissions, Word began to update itself. and it just shut itself down. And you know, it's not, it was, the word embarrassing, it was more just like, what am I going to do? Because I'd already caused so much delay. I just looked like I didn't have any sense. And another point that I would make is that to log on to that particular platform, it was a new platform. And I was having trouble logging on. But what I had realised, and what the chair of the tribunal had realised I was doing, was that I was inputting the code to log on into the wrong box. So that made me look like an idiot. And so now this thing was now uploading, and I was not in a position to say, "Oh, sorry, sir, my Word document is uploading, it's freezing, so I need to," you know, so I just had to continue. And I'd spent a lot of time drafting those submissions, so I did know the content. The written the written submissions were more for kind of reassurance, and were also just a kind of structure, but it was just so awkward and stressful, and just and the truth is, it wasn't as smooth as it would have been if I had the written document in front of me. So that's one of the more embarrassing, mortifying, stressful situations I had more recently.
Yeah, I know what you mean, especially in terms of when you think it's your fault and it's your delay, but it's not you, it's the computer. I've had that a couple of times when using, we won't promote individual portals, using a particular one for a video call. That started to update when I opened it up, and it was, I couldn't log on until the update was finished. And it took ages, so I was about 10 or 15 minutes late for the call. And it was a call which I was chairing, you know, as well. So it was, it's so embarrassing.
Yeah. It is, because it's just like, okay. And even when you say it to most people tend to understand, but at the same time, they kind of don't. They're just like, okay, so you had an issue with an update. But anyway, I think it's just part and parcel, because one of the things I've noticed now with remote working is that people are a little bit more accepting of things that might happen. You know, if a dog comes in and starts barking, you know, that doesn't mean that you're very unprofessional. No. You know, if suddenly somebody pops in who shouldn't, and then they pop out again, you know, that doesn't mean that you're incompetent and you've jeopardized the whole proceedings. And people understand that actually we are working from home some of the time, and things like that do happen.
Yeah, definitely. It's got more relaxed for sure. My one then for this one, seeing how you're in Africa, I've only been to Africa once, and I went to it was my first ever work trip with the Institute of Arbitrators, and it was to an arbitration conference in Tunis. And when I got there, I was the only, there was one other Englishman there, and everyone else was African and French. And I couldn't understand a word anyone was saying. And if it wasn't for this other person who was also a barrister, Tony Connaughty from Lamb Chambers, and his wife, Margaret, they really looked after me that week. But the embarrassing bit was I was in the main conference and they gave me an interpreter because they didn't have English, sort of any headphones with English or anything. So they gave me an interpreter. And I was about 26 or 27, something like that. Only been in the job a couple of years, was still getting to grips with what arbitration was, never mind anything else. And I started daydreaming, sitting there. It was so far over my head. It was all international arbitration. I didn't have a clue what the interpreter was talking about. And I started to daydream. And there's about 400 people in the conference centre. And then all of a sudden, it just went silent. The interpreter stopped speaking, and the person who was speaking stopped speaking. And it sort of shook me into thinking, oh, why has everyone stopped talking? And I looked up, and every single person in the room was looking at me. And the interpreter had asked me a question as the representative of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. The speaker asked the question, which the interpreter had put to me. but because I wasn't listening,
Mm,
and I was,
mm,
oh my God, what do I do? And I had
yeah.
to make out that I hadn't quite understood the interpretation properly.
Mm,
And then the question was really technical. It was like a proper
okay.
technical international arbitration question. I didn't have a
Mm,
clue what the answer was, so I just said,
mm,
I'm sorry, I don't know what the answer is, but I'll find out for you, and someone will get back to you."
yeah.
So after all that, but it was so embarrassing, and I
No,
just
I can imagine.
everyone was looking at me
Mm.
and laughing. Where's this stupid?
Oh God.
It wasn't
No,
concentration.
they probably weren't laughing at you. They're
No,
probably
no, I bet
laughing
they
at the
weren't.
scenario. You know,
Yeah,
they just thought, ah,
yeah,
yeah.
it was very bad. But I was also very ill on that trip because I ate some
Ah,
seafood that didn't agree with me.
oh
It
God.
was an interesting first trip abroad. But
Mm.
Connorty's looked after me well, which
Oh,
was
that's
great.
nice.
So we've talked a lot about work. So away from
Yes.
work, do you do anything?
Okay.
Or are you just one of these people who just life is work?
Oh no, no. I like I'm a city person actually. I fully
Mm,
enjoy living in the city and I try to make the most out of London town as I call it. So
mm,
when I can afford it, I'll go to the theatre,
mhm,
um I'll go to exhibitions, I like photography and and I like to read
mm,
and and I like to go to yeah and I like to yeah those are the key things. I like to go to the theatre. I like to go to um I like photography
mhm.
and I like to read and I like to go to little pop-up events that tend to happen in the local community.
Yeah.
So those are the things I enjoy.
Mm. No, that's good. Yeah, London's great, isn't it? I mean,
Mm,
I live sort of 30 miles outside London, but for 20
mm,
odd years we're working in London, and it's fantastic.
mm,
It's you just I don't think you can beat it, to be honest, personally.
yeah.
And I love this time of year when it's cold and crisp,
Mm, mm,
when it gets dark, and you're just walking around the city, and all the lights are on, and everyone's sort of got a smile on the face. It's a great time of year
yeah.
to just have a walk around.
Mm,
Yeah,
I agree.
and I think as well, on the theatre side,
Mm,
me and my wife enjoy going to the theatre. We're going in January to see a show. Um, And actually, if you shop around, you can get some really good deals on tickets. So
yes.
again, going back to what we were talking about earlier about people not necessarily having the money to do stuff.
Mm,
I think theatre is one of those things that needs to be more accessible, but actually
mm,
become more accessible because I think there are now better ways of getting deals and to go
mm,
to see some of these shows. Of course, the
yeah.
accessibility issue often comes up, and not every town and city has the best shows on. So
Yes.
if you're not from London, you've got a cost to get to London in the first place.
Mm,
But yeah, I think theatre's fantastic, and I look at the pictures as well, the cinema, and just like losing myself for a
yeah.
couple of hours and not thinking about anything
Yeah.
else.
No,
But,
I agree with you. And one thing I'd say about the theatre, and I think that goes back to the point I made about arbitration sustainability. I think that the theatre industry did think to themselves, if we don't do schemes and initiatives
mm,
where people can come and watch these shows affordably, in due course, we're not going to be able to maintain these buildings. We're not going to be able to really stay in business. We'd only
mm,
have a limited audience, that potentially is aging. So I remember just what I'm not in the theatre industry, but I remember watching telly where they used to have these different uh, panels on news events and entertainment events where they talk about how they were going to be doing discounts for these groups, how they'd be doing different initiatives so
mm,
people would go to the theatre. And I think it's been slow, but I think it
mm.
has had a real impact. And a lot of the time, you can go and watch things at an acceptable cost. That's not just
Yeah.
that's not too expensive.
Yeah, and now they do things as well. I mean, we went a few months ago. My wife, my daughter, and I went to see Prima Facie, um,
Ah,
which I think is just the most incredible performance I've ever seen in my life. Of
Oh
anything.
wow, I write that down. When was
Uh,
that, in the West End or
it was, yeah,
where?
it was. It was Jodie Comer, who is sort of Killing Eve fame,
Ah,
and it was a one. She was the only person in the show. It was one of those one people shows, and she was a
okay.
barrister who'd been sexually assaulted. And I won't say any more in case anyone else hasn't
Yes.
seen it, but it was incredible. But what they
Okay.
did is they then started to show it at cinemas as well.
Oh,
So it was a
okay.
West End show, but it was on at the cinema.
Mm,
And now you can download it. And honestly, if you've not seen it, I mean, I know she's doing it in Broadway in a
mm,
probably this next year.
mm,
But you know, if you can't get to Broadway, I'll nip
mm,
over just to watch the show. I think just try and get hold of a copy of it. It's absolutely amazing. But again, it was a way of showing that theatres have changed, because they're now,
mm,
you can actually watch it at the pictures if you've not been able
mm,
to a show,
mm.
which is really good. A couple of questions left.
Okay.
What's the best advice you've been given in terms of your career moving forward in arbitration?
Um, well, it's a simple bit of advice, but I
Mm,
think it's to be nice to everybody you come across.
yeah.
Because the thing about arbitration is that there is a lot of um, events, and it's important to be well connected and to meet people and to go to arbitral events. And if you're kind of new to arbitration, that
Mm,
can be a temptation to kind of focus your attentions on those individuals that you feel perhaps are in a position to confer an opportunity or have some sort of
mm,
status or have some sort of clout, to be very strategic. And
mm,
and I think that there's a danger if you do that, that you disregard some very interesting just, and even if they're not interesting, they're just
mm,
nice people that you come across and you can have a
yeah.
conversation with, and you can have a friendship with, or professional friendship with. And it's just important not to be dismissive or to be rude or to be, you know, less courteous than you would be if they were somebody who you thought was well known, um,
Mm,
just because you don't know who they are. So I think that it's important to just be nice to everybody you come across. Not and this just goes not just to arbitration, but just in life generally. And then
mm,
linked to that, I think, is to not hold a grudge. And
mm,
this I find a bit more difficult to do. So when you're involved in business, when you're involved in adversarial work, inevitably there'll be some things that will end not as well as you wanted them to,
yeah.
or and again, it can be tempting to kind of have some enmity towards the people or the parties involved.
Mm,
And while I think we all have to learn, we might be more cautious in our dealings with those people going forward. I think for your own kind of well-being, health, and just because it's not worth it, I think it's I think it's good not to hold grudges.
yeah.
So I think those are the bits of advice that I've
They are
found have been beneficial.
two of the best bits of advice I've heard, I think.
Mm.
And be nice is like be kind, isn't it? That's what my
Mm.
wife's mantra is, be kind.
Mhm.
It's not hard to be kind.
Mm.
And there's nothing more embarrassing than being. One of the things I've noticed now that I've got my own business is I
Mm.
don't have to have those targeted networking things now. So if I go to
Mm.
an event, I can speak to who I want to, rather than
Mm.
being told, "Oh, you've got to see this person. Make sure you go and see them. Make sure you make a line
Mm.
for them as soon as you see them." And there's nothing worse in the past when I've been at conferences, and this will be the same in every single sector. So it's not
Mm.
arbitration, but you'll see someone sort of almost look down at someone else because they're not particularly
Mm.
well connected or whatever. And it all goes back
Mm.
to that diversity and inclusivity side again. Why
Mm.
shouldn't someone who's at the beginning of their career be given the fair chance to have an opinion? something. And so yeah, 100% agree with the niceness and the kindness. The second one's a bit harder.
Yes.
This, you know, when you've worked in the sector as long as I have, there are grudges. You know, but sometimes you get surprised, and I think sometimes, you know, people maybe forget that they've got a grudge as well, which can be a surprise. Someone you think maybe doesn't like you very much because of something that happened 15 years ago, and then you see them at a conference and, oh, how are you doing? How are you doing? And you think, oh, maybe they've forgotten that they, you know, didn't like me 15 years ago.
Well, the truth is, they wouldn't have forgotten, because people don't forget. But and I think this is why not holding a grudge is beneficial. They've chosen not to let it get in the way of just chatting to you, being friendly, and seeing, you know, and just getting on with things. And I think that's the benefit of the not holding the grudge, because I do think we have to be sensible here. You know, if somebody's been underhand, you're not going to just say forget about it. You have to take that into account when you approach anything involving them going forward. But you don't, and it's not about being fake, but at the same time, you just don't let it get in the way of I think your interactions. That's my view anyway.
Yeah. No, it's a good attitude to have, and not something I always do in practice, but a good attitude to have. Right, last question.
Yes.
Is there anything that I've not asked you that you wish I had, or is there anything we've discussed that you want to cover any more?
To be honest, not really, Greg. I think it's been I've enjoyed our conversation, and there's nothing particular that I wish you'd asked me. No.
Good. In that case, I'm going to wrap up and say thank you very much, Tope. It's been a pleasure. It's been much too long, and I look forward to meeting you in person at some point.
Yes, definitely.
Would you mind giving listeners your email or the Chambers email or whatever, if anyone wanted to get in touch with you?
Oh, yes. No, people are welcome to get in touch with me. I'm part of 33 Bedford Row Chambers, so my details, I think, are on the website, but my email address is ta@33br.co.uk, so I can be contacted via that email address.
Lovely. And if anyone wants to get in touch with Tope and they want to do it via me, then please do get in touch. So I'd like to say final thank you to Tope for being my guest today, and I'll see you next time on No Disputing That. Thank you for listening to No Disputing That. Please subscribe to hear more from experts in the field. If you'd like to suggest any future areas for discussion or to appear on the show yourself, you can follow us on Twitter at No Disputing That and send us a DM. Finally, if you need a mediator, give my management team at Arbiter International a call on 020 7936 7070 or email info@arbitra.co.uk. See you next time on No Disputing That.